It's hard to believe, but here we are. I'm 30 years old, and recently, I've managed to turn my entire family against me. What started as a misunderstanding, or should I say, a complete blow-up, has now become a full-fledged family drama with no easy resolution in sight. It all began when my family held a funeral without telling me. They convinced themselves that I was there, and now they refuse to believe otherwise. It's like I've become the villain in a story I didn't even know I was part of. I was raised in a tiny town, one of about 500 people. But when I left for college 2 hours away in the city of 15,000, I found my place. I loved it there, everything from the parks to the stores, the library, and all the community events. After graduation, I stayed, got married, and settled into the city life. It's been nearly a decade now. And every few weeks, I make the trip back to my hometown. I call, I text, I keep in touch. My family has always been close. Or, so I thought. There's just my brother, mum, stepdad, dad, stepmum, and an aunt and uncle. Small, right. A bit of a quirky mix, but nothing extraordinary. We've always shared holidays, celebrated together, and been there for each other. Our family is small, but it's tight-knit. It seemed perfect, drama-free, at least until now. The recurring question when I visit is always the same: when are you moving back? And every time, I laugh it off. The idea of going back has never appealed to me. The town has charm, sure, but it's inconvenient. There's nothing there. The closest medical facility is over an hour away, and the main road floods every Easter, cutting off access. My family grumbles about me not moving back, but I just can't. I've tried encouraging them to come here, where everything is easier, from healthcare to community support, but they refuse. They like their small town, and that's fine for them. Me, I'm happy where I am. Everything was going fine until the pandemic hit. Both of my grandparents, who had been slowly declining in health, passed away during that time. They were both old, and their health had been a ticking clock. Thankfully, neither of them contracted COVID-19, but visiting them during those months was impossible. We did what we could through FaceTime, which was a lifeline, but it wasn't the same. They passed away months apart, and they were both cremated, their ashes stored securely under the kitchen sink. That was in 2021. Nothing unusual, just a sad reality we all dealt with, quietly. And then, I found out that my family had held a funeral for them without telling me. They scattered their ashes in my uncle's maple grove in July, while I had no idea this was happening. Not a word, not a mention. I was so confused when I first heard about it. My great-uncle from California posted on Facebook about his health, thanking God that he had made it long enough to attend my grandma's final resting place. That was when the truth came crashing down. I immediately called my mum. Her response was, "Oh, the funeral in July. Remember, you visited for the 4th of July and everything. We did it on the 8th. I visited them right before. So how could this have happened without me knowing?" Apparently, they'd been planning it for months, even bringing my great-uncle over from the other side of the country. No one thought to tell me. Not a single word was spoken. Not one person considered calling me. I only found out because of a Facebook post. My mum sounded casual about it, as if everything had been perfectly normal. She said I was there, and everyone believes it. They all believe I was there, even though I can prove that I wasn't. My location history shows that I wasn't there. And my husband was at work that weekend, every weekend in June and July. His time clock doesn't lie, but somehow, that doesn't matter to them. I'm hurt. I'm upset. I feel abandoned by my family, and now they're furious with me. They think I'm causing unnecessary drama, but nothing I say can convince them otherwise. They're all united in this strange belief that I was there, and they've all put me on red, waiting for me to admit that I'm wrong. They think I've lost my mind. Some even believe there's a doppelganger of me running around attending funerals. Others just refuse to admit that they made a massive mistake. Thanksgiving came, and things got even more bizarre. My family posted cryptic messages on Facebook, talking about forgetful kids and mental health. It was weird. It was like they were trying to get me to admit that I had forgotten something, or worse, that I was in some sort of mental decline. My mum's best friend reached out to me, urging me to admit I was wrong and apologize. as if I was the one causing all the stress. I asked her if she'd checked everyone's home for carbon monoxide poisoning. She hung up on me. I even reached out to people in my hometown just to check in on my folks. They all said they were fine. I spoke to the local volunteer firefighters to see if they could check for gas leaks. Just in case, I'm grasping at straws here, nothing makes sense. My family refuses to acknowledge the evidence I've presented. They're convinced I'm lying, that I photoshopped my location history, and that's when it hit me. I've reached a point of no return with them. Thanksgiving came, and my husband and I decided to stay home. We cooked a small turkey, had a quiet meal, and watched a movie. Later, we sat outside with a bottle of wine, watching the sunset. It was a peaceful day. My mum called that night, asking when I was showing up. I told her we were staying home this year, and that we hoped they had a happy Thanksgiving. Her response was quiet. She didn't seem angry, just resigned. After I sent a happy Thanksgiving message in the family group chat, I received a few replies, but nothing more. It felt like the silence between us had solidified. And then my dad called me on Sunday morning, like we always do. I wasn't expecting it. He hadn't called in a while, and I could tell he was walking on eggshells. We chatted about the weather and other trivial things, trying to avoid the elephant in the room. Eventually, he asked if we were coming out for Christmas, and I told him we weren't. When he asked if he and my stepmom could come visit us instead, I told him it wasn't a good idea this year. It was the first time we'd spoken since all this drama started, and I could feel the strain in the conversation. It wasn't a warm, easy talk like it used to be. That's when I realized how much this had affected not only me, but my entire family. The silence between us was suffocating, and I didn't know how to break it. But for now, I'm standing my ground. I won't apologize for something I didn't do, and yet, the weight of it all lingers. Thanksgiving has passed. Christmas is approaching, and I have no idea how this will unfold. The days after Thanksgiving passed quietly, with no resolution in sight. I tried to push everything out of my mind and focus on my life here. My husband and I had our small Thanksgiving celebration, which was a peaceful and much-needed break from the chaos. But as much as I tried to move on, the tension in my family was palpable, and I couldn't escape it. Christmas was coming up, and I had no idea how to handle it. The closer it got, the more uncomfortable it became. My mum kept posting on Facebook about forgetful kids and mental health, almost like she was trying to guilt-trip me into admitting something I hadn't done. It was so strange, like she was playing mind games with me. And then, just to make things even weirder, my mum's best friend reached out to me. She told me I needed to apologize, that I was causing my mum so much stress. It made me furious. I asked her if she'd checked everyone's home for Kotwu. It felt like they were trying to convince me that I was the one losing my mind, not them. She hung up. I started reaching out to people in my hometown to check on my parents. I called a few neighbors and friends just to get a sense of what was going on. Everyone said everything seemed fine. No one had noticed anything unusual, but my mom was clearly trying to manipulate the situation. My great-uncle from California had been posting on Facebook about his declining health, and that was how I first discovered the funeral. He'd written a heartfelt post about how he was thankful to still be alive long enough to see my grandma's final resting place. That's when it all clicked, the funeral that I had never been told about. The funeral that, according to my family, I was supposedly at. I wasn't. I couldn't have been. Because I had the proof. My location history, my husband's work schedule, everything showed that I wasn't there. But nothing I said could convince them. They were so convinced that I was lying, that I had to have photoshopped the evidence. They were gaslighting me. The more I tried to explain, the more they dug their heels in. It was like they were living in an alternate reality where I had attended this funeral. They even convinced themselves that my husband had been there too, even though he had to work every weekend during June and July. It didn't make sense. But they wouldn't listen to reason. They were so deep in denial that they actually started accusing me of causing drama. They thought I was making a big deal out of nothing. The irony was painful. How could they not see the truth? So, we spent Christmas apart. Hubby and I stayed home. We cooked a small turkey, made a cozy meal, and enjoyed each other's company. It was a quiet day, just the two of us, and it was exactly what we needed. It felt good to focus on us, away from the chaos. But then came the phone call. My mom called on Thanksgiving Day. When I told her we were staying home, she went quiet. It was a long pause, and I could almost feel the disappointment radiating from her. There was no anger, just an overwhelming sense of resignation. She didn't even ask if we would be coming out for Christmas. She just hung up. Christmas came and went, and I hadn't spoken to anyone in my family. It was so strange. I thought about reaching out, but what was the point? I knew they wouldn't acknowledge the truth, not when they had so much invested in this lie. The silence between us was suffocating, and I felt like I was trapped in a situation where I couldn't win. A few weeks later, my dad finally called me. We hadn't spoken in a while. I always looked forward to our Sunday morning chats, where we'd talk over coffee and watch the sunrise. But this time, it was different. It was awkward. He didn't address the drama. Instead, we talked about the weather, about birds in the yard, and random, inconsequential things. But even with all that small talk, I could feel the underlying tension. It was like we were both pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. Eventually, he asked if we were coming out for Christmas, and I told him we weren't. He sounded sad, but not surprised. He then asked if he and my stepmom could come visit us instead, but I told him that it wasn't a good time. I had to be honest with him, I didn't want them there. I didn't want to pretend like everything was fine when it wasn't. He accepted it, but it was clear that the situation had affected him too. There was an awkward pause before we ended the conversation. That was the last time we spoke. As Christmas passed, things stayed silent. No calls, no messages. Just radio silence from my family. And then, just when I thought it couldn't get any stranger, I found out that my brother had been silently watching everything unfold. He hadn't spoken up, but he had been keeping track of what was happening. And one day he called me. It was a brief conversation, but he apologized. He admitted that he didn't know why he went along with it. He apologized for everything. It was such a relief to hear him say that. I had missed him more than I realized. My brother and I had been close growing up, and I always thought we'd be able to count on each other. But in this mess, it felt like we had been drifting apart. We were only 2 years apart, and we shared so much of our childhood together. He had always been my rock, the person I turned to. But now, we were both lost in this web of lies. We talked for a while, and he explained everything that had happened on his side. Apparently, my mom had a cancer scare late last year, which no one had bothered to tell me about. That's when things started to shift for her. She and my stepmom had been planning the funeral without telling me. It had been a calculated move, a way to force me to come back to the town I had left behind. They thought if they created this event, it would make me realize that I should return. But it wasn't about the funeral. It was about control. My brother told me that he realized how messed up the whole situation was. He felt trapped. Just like me, he apologized for not speaking up sooner, but at least he was trying to make things right. I was relieved, but I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Christmas came and went, and things stayed tense. My brother was staying with us now, and we were trying to figure out the next steps. My mom kept calling him, trying to guilt-trip him into coming back, but he had had enough. He told her he was staying with us for a while, and that was that. I wasn't sure how things were going to end. Would my family ever acknowledge their mistakes? Would they apologize for what they had done? I didn't know. But for now, I was focusing on what I could control: my life with my husband, my brother, and the peace that we had found in the midst of all this chaos. The days after Christmas were strange. Things felt quieter now that my brother was living with us. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't alone in this mess. Having him here was comforting in a way, but also a reminder of everything that had gone wrong. We weren't speaking to anyone in the family, and there was an uncomfortable silence that hung in the air. No one had apologized, and no one had acknowledged the chaos that had unfolded. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but I hoped that time would help to heal the wounds. My brother, though, seemed to be doing better. He was settling into the new space, helping around the house, and trying to find some peace. It was hard to tell what was going on in his head, but I could see he was in a lot of pain. He had always been a big guy, and now he looked almost frail. His clothes were too loose on him, and I couldn't help but worry. I asked him if he was okay, but he just shrugged it off, saying he was fine. We both knew that wasn't true. I could see that he was struggling, and it hurt me to see him like that. He had always been my protector, the one person who made me feel safe. Now, I felt like I was supposed to protect him, but I didn't know how. We talked a lot, but the conversations always seemed to circle around the same issue. The funeral, the lies, the betrayal. It was like a ghost that hovered over us, and neither of us knew how to put it to rest. A week or two later, I received a call from my dad. It wasn't unusual for him to check in, but the tone of his voice was different. He sounded weary, like the weight of everything was getting to him too. We talked about the weather, as we always did, and about the birds we had seen in our yards. But underneath the small talk, there was something unspoken. I knew it, and I think he did too. Eventually, he asked if we were coming for Easter. It was the first time in a while that I had heard him speak with such hesitation. I could tell he was still trying to figure out where everything stood. I told him we weren't planning to come, that we needed some time to ourselves. I could feel the disappointment in his voice. But there was nothing I could do about it. The truth was, I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to face my family, to pretend like everything was fine when it so clearly wasn't. It was hard to admit. But I knew it wasn't just the funeral that had broken everything apart. It was the lies, the manipulation, the way my family had treated me as if I didn't matter, as if my presence at that funeral was just an afterthought. It wasn't something I could just brush off, and I wasn't going to pretend like it was okay. I wasn't going to let them make me feel guilty for standing up for myself. As Easter approached, I kept thinking about the conversation I had with my brother. He had apologized, and I knew he was trying to make amends. But there was still so much unspoken between us. He had been part of this too, even though he hadn't spoken up. He had gone along with the lie. It wasn't something I could just forget. Meanwhile, things were moving forward for me and my husband. We had settled into a routine, just the two of us. We'd gotten a small Christmas bonus, and we had spent some time getting the house ready for the new year. We had even started a new tradition with Advent calendars. Something we had never done before. It was fun and silly, but it helped take my mind off everything else. We had our own little world, and it felt good to focus on that. I could see that my husband was struggling too, though. This whole situation had put a strain on us, but we were getting through it. We had each other, and for now, that was enough. We had a small circle of friends, and we spent time with them during the holidays. My brother, who was still staying with us, had been spending time with a new group of people too. He had made friends with a couple of neighbors, an elderly couple next door, and they seemed to be keeping him occupied. It was nice to see him interact with them, but I couldn't help but wonder if he was trying to distract himself from the mess back home. One day, my brother mentioned that he was thinking about renting an apartment in our area. He didn't want to live with us forever, and I understood that. He had always been independent, but he'd never really lived on his own. He seemed to have a lot of anxiety about it, and I could see that he was struggling with the idea of making a big decision. I told him that he was welcome to stay as long as he needed, but I could tell he was leaning toward finding his own place. We didn't push him to make any decisions, but we wanted him to know that he had options. It wasn't like back home, where things were so uncertain. Here, he had a support system. He had us. But I could tell that he was still torn. He hadn't been in the best shape when he arrived, and it was clear that this whole ordeal had taken a toll on him. I hoped that being here would help him heal, but I knew it wouldn't be easy. Things were slowly getting back to normal, in their own way. My husband and I had decided not to answer any more calls from my family. We'd made it clear that we were spending the holidays together, and we weren't going to entertain any more drama. But that didn't stop my mum from texting, trying to reach out. She asked when my brother would be coming back home. I told her that he was staying with us for a while, and that was that. It felt good to take control of the situation, to set boundaries. My brother was in the same boat, and it was comforting to know that we were both in this together. We didn't have to go back to that toxic environment. We didn't have to let them walk all over us. But as much as I wanted to move on, I couldn't ignore the fact that things were still unresolved. My mum and stepdad were still trying to manipulate the situation, still trying to guilt-trip my brother into returning, but he had made up his mind. He wasn't going back, and neither was I. The situation with my family wasn't going to be solved overnight. but we were taking it one step at a time. For now, my brother was staying with us, and we were focusing on our own happiness. We didn't have to live under their shadow anymore. We could make our own decisions, and we could finally find peace. As the weeks rolled on, I started to feel a shift, though it wasn't as smooth as I had hoped. The tension with my family wasn't just going to disappear, the damage had been done, and it seemed like the wounds were still fresh, even if people weren't openly acknowledging them. It was like a quiet storm, a tense calm before the inevitable storm of confrontation and emotion. I wasn't sure if my family would ever understand the hurt they'd caused me. But I had to keep moving forward. My brother had adjusted to his new life with us. He was still trying to find his place, still working remotely, but he was getting more comfortable. He was picking up little projects around the house, fixing things we had put off for ages. I was glad to see him stay busy and get some of his confidence back. It was clear he wasn't the same person he was when he first arrived. The weight he had carried, both literally and figuratively, seemed to be lifting. He was eating better, sleeping better, and even laughing a little more. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Hubby and I had been spending time with him, getting him involved in small traditions we had started, like cooking meals together and having little movie nights. We weren't pretending that everything was fine, but we were carving out a new normal, a normal that didn't revolve around the chaos of my family. We were creating our own traditions, our own space, and it felt good. There were still moments of tension, of course, but for the most part, we were in a better place than we had been in months. Then came the inevitable phone call. My dad reached out, but this time it wasn't to check in about the weather or the birds. He wanted to talk. I could feel the weight of the conversation before he even said a word. He started with small talk, but I knew he was waiting for the right moment to get to the point. When he finally asked me if I would consider coming for Easter, I didn't have the energy to lie. I had been avoiding this conversation for so long, but the time had come. I told him that I wasn't ready to return home. I wasn't sure when I would be. There was too much unsaid, too much unresolved. The funeral, the lies, the manipulation, those things weren't easy to forget. I knew that my mom and stepdad had their own reasons for what they did, but that didn't make it right. I couldn't just pretend everything was fine. But then, something unexpected happened. My dad didn't get defensive. He didn't try to guilt-trip me. Instead, he asked if he and my stepmom could come to visit us. This time, there wasn't any pressure. He wasn't demanding that we come back home. He was asking to meet me where I was. It was a small gesture, but it was significant. It felt like he was finally accepting that I wasn't going to just fall back into the family's expectations. He was willing to meet me halfway. I told him that it wasn't a good time for us to have visitors. Hubby and I had plans to keep things quiet, to focus on us for a while. But I did assure him that we weren't closing the door forever. There was still hope for reconciliation, but it was going to take time, and it had to be on my terms, not theirs. A few days later, I received a message from my mom. She didn't apologize for the lies or the manipulation, but she did acknowledge that things had been hard. She mentioned that she had been thinking about everything, that she realized how much she had hurt me. It wasn't the apology I had hoped for, but it was a start. I didn't reply immediately. I wasn't ready. But the fact that she had reached out felt like a step in the right direction. The weeks passed, and things stayed relatively quiet. My brother continued to stay with us, and we spent time together as a family, just the three of us. He was still hesitant about going back home, and I understood why. He didn't want to deal with the drama, the guilt, and the constant pressure from our mum. He had made the decision to stay with us, and for now, that was where he was most comfortable. Easter came, and I didn't visit my parents, but I did send them a card. It was a small gesture, but it felt right. It wasn't an apology, but it was an acknowledgement that I still cared. I wasn't ready to forgive them completely, but I wasn't ready to completely shut them out either. A few days later, my dad called again. This time, it wasn't to ask about Easter or to guilt-trip me. He simply wanted to check in. He told me he had spoken to my mum, and they had been discussing the possibility of having a family meeting, a real one, where everyone could talk openly about what had happened and how they felt. My dad seemed hopeful, and for the first time in a while, I felt a little hope too. The idea of a family meeting wasn't exactly something I was thrilled about. but it was something I knew we needed. We couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. We had to face the truth and come to some kind of understanding. But I knew it wouldn't be easy. My mum and stepdad weren't going to apologize easily, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to forgive them just yet. A week later, my brother decided he was going to move out. He had found a small apartment nearby, and he was ready to try living on his own. I was proud of him. It was a big step for him, and I knew it wasn't an easy decision. But he was ready, and while I was sad to see him go, I was happy for him. He was finding his way, and that was all I could ask for. The family meeting never happened. It was postponed indefinitely, and I'm not sure if it will ever take place. For now, I'm focusing on my own life. My relationship with my husband is stronger than ever, and my brother is finding his own path. As for my parents, I don't know what the future holds. I'm not ready to rush back into the fold, but I'm also not closing the door entirely. The wounds are still fresh, and I'm not sure if they will ever fully heal. But for now, I'm okay. I'm learning to live my life on my terms. And that's enough. The past few months have been a journey of self-discovery, pain, and healing. It's been messy and complicated, but I've learned more about myself and my family than I ever thought possible. And while things may never be the same, I'm hopeful that, in time, we can rebuild. Maybe not as we were before, but in a way that's healthier and more honest. For now, that's all I can ask for.